About to do this reaction to a video called Bad Neighborhoods in Ancient Rome. So it's going to talk to us about a little bit. It's kind of like a short documentary about different things, about like his bad neighborhoods in Rome. See stuff that people probably did back then. So we're talking about a long time ago. Yes, it's true. Men do think about Rome, the Roman Empire, quite often. I also think about the Persian Empire. I think about the ancient Mesopotamian, Genghis Khan's empire, Alexander the Great. The Byzantine Empire. I like history in general, ancient history. I find it fascinating. Consider myself a little bit of an old soul. So I'm going to try to keep my channel and these reactions I do, try to keep them changed up a little bit for people to see different flavors of my personality, who I am. And this is something that I would just definitely have an interest in watching on my own because I found it on my own. So let's get it in. Also, if you want to like and subscribe my content, I would appreciate it. If you want to send some tips, some gratitudes, you can do so as well. My email is kho1981@gmail.com. All right, let's do this video.
For 500 years, Rome was the biggest, richest, and most spectacular city on Earth. It was also the most dangerous. Every bath and alleyway had its thieves and thugs, and, even after Augustus put a stop to the street-fighting gangs of the late Republic, violent crime remained a problem. Ancient authors mention murderers, guilds of criminals, and even a mysterious group of assassins who killed their victims with poisoned needles. Firemen patrolled Rome's streets at night, and soldiers of the urban cohorts were stationed in public places during the day. Neither did much to suppress the crime rate. The urban cohorts, in fact, routinely contributed to the problem by extorting protection money. The Praetorian Guard, who were sometimes called in as riot police, were even worse, and became notorious for casually beating and abusing innocent citizens. Crime was not focused in any one part of ancient Rome. Although some neighborhoods were richer than others, there was nothing like the clear separation of high and low-income areas found in many modern cities. Throughout Rome, the mansions of the elite stood side by side with low-rent apartments and modest shops. Let's take a closer look. This is a map of Rome around the year 300. The outer dark line represents the Aurelian Walls, which marked the edge of the imperial city. The inner line traces the old Republican walls, long disused and built over by this point in the city's history. Much of the city center was off-limits to housing: the Forum and Imperial Fora, the Capitoline Hill with its temples, the Palatine Hill with its palaces, the Colosseum and Circus Maximus. Few Romans, likewise, lived in the Campus Martius.
Gotta say, it's amazing that we have details and records of that. This was almost 2,000 years ago, 1,700 years ago. This was like 200 years after apparently Christ lived.
The low-lying area in the Bay of the Tiber, since this district was also filled with public buildings. The huge imperial bath complexes took up neighborhood-sized tracts of land.
Wow.
So did the vast private gardens along the edges of the city. In short, everyone in Rome, besides the emperors and the wealthiest aristocrats, had to live in the spaces between all those red circles. The houses of the elite, as mentioned, were scattered throughout the city, but there were clusters of mansions in a few areas, usually on the summits of hills, which were likelier to catch breezes during the sweltering summer. One such cluster was on the crest of the Quirinal Hill, where aristocratic residences lined an ancient thoroughfare called Alta Semita, High Street. There were other groups of mansions along the parks of the Esquiline and Caelian Hills. During the 1st and 2nd centuries, in an early instance of gentrification, elite houses displaced the historical working-class neighborhoods atop the Aventine Hill. So, where were the less salubrious parts of the city?
Salubrious.
Rome's iconic rough neighborhood was the Suburra, in the swampy valley between the Esquiline and Viminal hills. Roman authors dwell on the neighborhood's filthy streets, cheap taverns, and cheaper brothels. But, as in most parts
Cheap brothels. I bet you the ancient Romans loved that. Cheap brothels. Think about that, man. Empire that's been passed on. They forgot about the cheap brothels. Or they remember it's like epigenetically passed on. That's hilarious. Cheap brothels. Not just brothels. Cheap ones.
of the city, there were pockets of affluence. For years, Caesar had a house there. The Emporium, Rome's warehouse district, was another unsavory part of town, inhabited mostly by dock workers and itinerant merchants. It didn't help that the whole neighborhood smelled like rancid olive oil, since it stood beside a gigantic mound of broken oil amphorae. Trastevere, across the river, was a crowded working-class district, home to many recent immigrants. It was not an especially rough neighborhood, but it wasn't respectable either. Everybody who was anybody lived on the other side of the Tiber. The Vatican, outside the Aurelian walls, was a patchwork of clay pits, working-class cemeteries, and scraggly vineyards that made the worst wine in Rome. It wasn't a dangerous area, but it wasn't a place to linger either.
Okay.
This video belongs to the Time Traveler's Guide to Ancient Rome series, which provides advice to those hypothetically possessing the means, motive, and opportunity to visit the ancient city. So, let's talk practicalities. If you were to somehow time travel to ancient Rome, which parts of the city would you be best advised to avoid? Obviously, you are much more likely to be mugged in the Suburra than on High Street. But it's not so much neighborhoods you have to watch out for, as it is trouble spots within those neighborhoods. Time travelers who find themselves in ancient Rome's seedier areas should avoid bars, barbers, and brothels.
I like all these old
Bars first. Roman bars, tabernae or cauponae, were places to get a quick bite or a long drink.
I like old pictures like this. Like, I mean, this probably isn't an old picture, but it's meant to look old. A depiction of old things and old events. Oh, this is super cool. So different than the way that people would draw things today. And how people would be drawn today. So interesting.
They served simple hot food and cheap wine, and were popular neighborhood watering holes. They often doubled, however, as brothels, and were centers of illegal gambling. In a neighborhood like the Suburra, entering one would likely attract unwanted attention. Second, barbers. What, you ask, was wrong with barbers? Just
Okay, that is probably an actual ancient carving from close to 2,000 years ago. I could see that being legit. Picture or portrait, that's probably as legit. And I know, well, I'm having this, back in the day, the barbers did everything. They did surgeries, they'd pull your teeth, they'd fix your hair, they'd shave you, they would do a whole bunch of different stuff like doctors and everything all in one. That's why they have that little symbol, their barbershop thing. It has all like the blood, the red. It's like almost like it all symbolization for everything that they did. And they kept that, even though barbers only do hair and shaving and stuff pretty much now. No teeth pulling, no surgeries, none of that. I think they'll probably explain that, but let's see what they have to say.
just one thing. They talked too much. Most Roman barbers worked outside, often on a street corner, where they tended to keep a steady stream of conversation going with their clients, with neighborhood idlers, and with anybody else within earshot. Hanging out near a barber would thus be a surefire way to let every criminal in the neighborhood know where to find the confused-looking foreigner. Finally, brothels. If you happened, by purest accident, to stumble into a Roman brothel, you would do best to stumble right back out.
Look at that.
Quite aside from the other hazards of patronizing such places, you would stand an excellent chance of being robbed. If you plan to spend a substantial part of your visit in dangerous situations, you might want to hire a bodyguard. A good bodyguard, preferably a retired gladiator, would deter all but the most determined thieves.
That would.
Unfortunately,
Man, I couldn't picture that today. Like, dudes walk around today, you just don't got a big dude with you that's gonna be your bodyguard. Like, you see, you used to fight in an arena for everybody to watch, slaughtering everybody, killing them, decapitating, chopping off hands and feet. I'm pretty sure if you've seen a dude on the street and you want to hurt somebody and you seen he had a bodyguard like that, an old, a retired gladiator, you'd be like, oh, hell no. This guy would mangle me up. Jeez, that would be the best.
some bodyguards were thieves themselves, so choose your associates carefully.
Oh, good point.
Regardless of whether you decided to hire a bodyguard, you could avoid most problems simply by not drawing attention to yourself, and, above all, not venturing out at night. After dark, ancient Rome was a no man's land. Time travelers tend to fare poorly. You'll find other useful tips about surviving a hypothetical trip to ancient Rome in my forthcoming book, Naked Statues, Fat Gladiators, and War Elephants. You'll find additional time travel gear on the Told in Stone Patreon page. Stay tuned for the next installment of A Time Traveler's Guide to Ancient Rome. And thanks.
Okay, that was the video. Pretty interesting. I mean, for a short little video, some cool stuff. And his new book coming out sounds pretty cool. I've heard that before as well too, about the fat gladiator thing, that they weren't like ripped movie, like super jacked and ripped, like you see in the Gladiator movie, that they actually ate a bunch of fatty food and high nutrient food before their fights to gain a layer of fat to protect their muscles from swords. I guess if they get cut and there's a layer of fat, it's better than going through layers of muscle. So they would try to purposely get fat as almost like a protection from their muscles getting split open, something like that. So, I mean, that makes kind of sense. I heard something like that before. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. Clickety click, click, click. Let's get it on. Get it on. So CKHO1981 at Gmail. You know what to do. Thank you. 2:30 in the morning.